How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So, today we're starting on a new series, as you can tell by the title of this video. So, this is going to be the pre-series episode, and we've got my friend Kristen here, who is going to be giving us the main background into the world of WoW.
The universe of Warcraft began when the two warring forces of the light and the void kind of exploded everywhere and just made a bunch of stuff. This is canon. This absolutely canon. But through that explosion came the Titans, which basically they hatch out of planets as if they were eggs, which is weird. But these Titans decided to bring order to the universe. They were the force of light. And at the same time, there was a force of darkness known as the Void Lords that wanted to turn all of existence into a realm of eternal torment and suffering, which is bad. The Titans decided that they would bring order to the universe, so they started going around to the different planets, and they found more and more Titans, and they formed a pantheon, basically. Well, not basically, it's literally called the Pantheon. But one of these Titans was Sargeras, or as somebody so lovingly calls him, Sergei.
Sergey is my man. Sergey is my man.
Sergei is one of the most evil forces in the universe. Anyway, Sargeras was the champion of the Pantheon, and he was tasked with fighting the Burning Legion, well, it wasn't the Burning Legion yet. They were just demons. The forces of just chaos, pure chaos. And Sargeras found out that these demons can only be killed in the Twisting Nether, so he started imprisoning them instead of killing them. But while he was on this crusade against the demons, he found a world that was inhabited by basically eldritch deities, horrifying things along the lines of Cthulhu, known as the Void Lord, or no, the Old Gods, which were basically the creations of the Void Lords in their attempt to corrupt one of the sleeping titans before it hatched out of its planet egg. So Sargeras kills this baby titan and all of the stuff on it, and then goes back to the Pantheon being like, hey, yo, look at this thing that I did. I broke all this bad stuff. And the other titans didn't like that too much. So they basically like condemned him and shunted him out of the Pantheon. And he got mad at them for obvious reasons. He went back to the demons and had them become his army, and he started his burning crusade against the Void Lords and their old god servants. Meanwhile, the other Titans had found another planet, another world soul, with possibly the most powerful Titan ever, and that world soul was known as Azeroth, which is where the world that comes to be the world of Warcraft. The Titans find 4 old gods on Azeroth. They don't want the powerful Titan inside to be corrupted, so they order the planet instead of destroying it like Sargeras did. The elementals on the planet were basically subjugated and imprisoned, and so are the old gods, because they discovered that if they try to kill the old gods, it doesn't go well. And these titans are like massive, massive beings larger than the planet, so they made smaller versions of themselves from the actual stone and earth of the planet. These are the Titan Keepers. They are the ones who would bring order to the planet for them. They imprisoned all of the elemental lords, and they were battling against the old gods, at least until the actual Titans reached down to the surface and ripped one out of the earth. But that didn't go very well at all, because the old gods had burrowed so deep that the world was basically bleeding, and they didn't want it to die, so they tried to fix it as best they could, which resulted in the creation of the Well of Eternity, which is a font of unimaginable magical power in the very center of the continent, which they called Kalimdor. The Titans left Azeroth in the hands of the keepers that they made, but the old gods didn't like being imprisoned, so they started to kind of work behind the scenes, and they created something known as the Curse of Flesh, which started infecting these Titan creations, which were basically the Earthen, which were like stone-skinned dwarves. There were the Mechanomes, Literally just mechanical gnomes, and I forget what the precursor to the Vrykul was called, but those three were infected by the Curse of Fletch, eventually turning into the dwarves and the gnomes and the giant humanoid things called Vrykul that we know and sort of love today. But this Curse of Flesh caught the attention of the Titan Keepers, and they were like, all right, we have to kind of combat this. It didn't go well. That is how the stone and earth creations of the Titans became fleshy and killable. That only mentions a couple of the races, because the fun part is the trolls came from basically like hyper evolved deers and squirrels that lived too close to the Well of Eternity. And then the trolls basically formed their own society, the Zandalari Empire, which broke apart into a lot of different little empires, and there's a bunch of wars and stuff about that. But one of those tribes of trolls settled right on the shores of the Well of Eternity, and those trolls hyper-evolved again into the Kaldori, the Children of the Stars, or the Night Elves, and they lived there on those shores of the Well of Eternity, basking in its power and learning the ways of arcane magic. Meanwhile, with Sargeras, he realized that an army of demons was powerful, yes, but also kind of stupid. So he needed to recruit smart people to be his lieutenants and generals and all of the important leadery positions of his demon army. So he found the planet of Argus, which was inhabited by the Eridar, which were a once proud race, but of their three leaders, two of them decided to accept Sargeras' bargain in order to get the power that he wanted to give them. The other one, the Prophet Velen, knew that this was a bad idea, so he took a small group of as many of his people as he could and hijacked a spaceship and launched himself out into space. And they were running, and that's their name. Instead of the Eridar, they were then known as the Draenei, or the Exiled Ones. And then Ashara came around.
Given willingly from a champion's frozen heart.
And Ashara is an awful, awful person. I do not like her. I've said this probably like 100 times in my lifetime, but Ashara is just the worst. Because what she did was she decided that she wanted power so badly that she was willing to sell out her own people. She's awful. But basically what happened there is that Sargeras, the Lord of the Burning Legion and the person wanting to murder all of life in existence, contacted her because he found out that they were using the Well of Eternity so much it literally sent like ripples through space-time or whatever. Some BS sciencey explanation goes here. But that's not important, because what is important is that Ashara betrayed her people and allowed the Burning Legion to come through using the Well of Eternity as a massive portal and start raising the continent. That was only foiled by a rebellion of Night Elves led by the current leader, Tyrande Whisperwind, and her, I don't think they were married yet, so lover, Malfurion Stormrage. And this little group of Night Elves, along with the force of the dragon aspects that already lived on the world from the time of the Titans, fought back the Burning Legion to the point where they were able to collapse the Well of Eternity and close the portal. But not before one of the dragon aspects, the black dragon Neltharion, or Deathwing, as he would come to be known, went a little crazy and murdered a lot of the other dragons. So they sealed him in a cave at the center of the earth. The first invasion of the Burning Legion was known as the War of the Ancients, and that culminated in the destruction of the Well of Eternity and then the continent. Because when the Well of Eternity collapsed in on itself, implosions are always followed by explosions, which caused the Sundering to break the entire continent into the map as it stands right now. After the explosion, most of the old continent of Kalimdor sunk into the sea, and the Well of Eternity became the Maelstrom, the large... It's a maelstrom, that's what it is. But the entire capital of the Elven Empire was lost to the waves, and all of the Highborn, the super snooty upper class of the elves, were lost with it. But then Ashara I hate her. She made a bargain, literally with a devil, the old god Nazath, and had all of her people turned into sea serpent fish people known as the Naga so that they would survive under the water. That was a very bad idea. Because now we have to deal with her. But that was 10,000 years before anything happened in the actual games. Thousands and thousands of years later, the Vrykul in Northrend, affected by the Curse of Flesh, had their kids start being born mutated and smaller, so they were ordered for the runts to be killed. But some of them were managed to be snuck over to the Eastern Kingdoms, and they became the humans. And those humans banded together in tribes and eventually formed kingdoms. And one of those kingdoms, the Kingdom of Arathor, was so large that it split into 7 smaller kingdoms. And I don't remember all of the names, but the important ones are Stormwind and Lordaeron right now, because those are the ones that go on to be very important down the line. Meanwhile, the dwarves, who were originally Titan forged, but they were affected by the Curse of Flesh and turned into the dwarves, they had a king, King Anvilmar, and he died very suddenly, leaving all of the dwarves to split into 3 clans, the Bronzebeards, the Wildhammers, and the Dark Irons, and then they went to war in the War of the Three Hammers. That culminated in the Bronzebeard clan winning and taking over the dwarf city of Ironforge, and the creation of the Black Rock Mountain, when the Dark Irons got pissy and summoned the Fire Lord himself, who trapped all of them in the Black Rock Mountain as his slaves. So remember the Draenei from before? Well, they just crash landed on a peaceful planet where a race known as the Orcs live, and they got along pretty well for a couple hundred years. Back on Azeroth, there was the office of the Guardian of Tirisfal, which was basically one person that one of the kingdoms, Dalaran, decided to give a whole bunch of magical power to in order to protect the world. Because, yeah, nuclear deterrents always work. So Sargeras, who still wants to find Azeroth so he can kill it, sends an avatar of himself, like a little mini-me, down to the planet to start gathering magic so he could open a bigger portal so his army could invade. But the current Guardian, Aegwynn, killed it. Very easily. The only problem is the portion of his soul that was powering that avatar jumped into Aegwynn and started whispering in the back of her mind. This is bad. There's a lot of bad. But Aegwynn had a child while she was in hiding so that she didn't have to give up the power of the Guardian. And this child's name was Medivh. And Medivh inherited the power of the Guardian from his mother so that she wouldn't have to give it to anybody else. This is called foreshadowing. But Medivh is going to be important later. Back on Draenor, with the Draenei and the Orcs, Kil'jaeden, one of the Eredar lords, now of the Burning Legion, empowered the orc known as Gul'dan and made him the first warlock in service of the Legion, of course, which is a bad thing. So Gul'dan starts framing the Draenei for attacking orc settlements and basically causes a war between the two races, and whips the orcs into a frenzy to the point where they form the very first orcish horde. This is not the horde as it is today, it's just the first one. But the orcs used to practice shamanism, being in tune with the elements, and they traded that for the power of warlockness. I don't know a better word for it. But they became warlocks, started using the evil magic of the Fel, the magic that kills life, and they kept using that, and the world began to die, and the fall of Draenor began. Around the same time, the orcs drank the fell blood of the Dreadlord Manoroth and became slaves to the Legion. So the Legion decided to use the orcs as a tool to weaken Azeroth for a full-scale invasion. And then Medivh, from before, who's now probably around 45-ish, contacted Gul'dan because, the part of Sargeras that was in his mom was fully transferred to him, so he grew up with that evil voice in the back of his head. And kind of a bad guy a little bit. So Medivh helped to open and build the construct that became known as the Dark Portal. which facilitated the first Orcish invasion of Azeroth and the beginning of the First War. That is all of the stuff that happened before the Great Wars.
Alright guys, so we're going to cut it there so that the video's not too long for you guys. So yeah, stay tuned for part 2 coming soon. I hope you enjoyed it, and yeah, we'll see you in the next one. Adios.